Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Once a DJ. If you'd like to support the show, then head to onceadj.com/support to find out how you can help. If you'd like to get in touch with any feedback or suggestions, email onceadjpodcast@gmail.com. Once a DJ is produced by the good people at Remote Control. If you'd like to find out more about working with them, head to remote-ctrl.co.uk. Time for the show. Once a DJ is brought to you with the support of Vinyl Underground Record Store. Since 1993, VU has been shipping new and used underground house, techno, disco, hip-hop, soul and more worldwide from Northampton in the UK. They're your go-to store for upfront releases, repressed classics and deep digging for undiscovered gems. And they're a great crew to deal with who really care about the music and their customers. To show the support to the Once a DJ community, they're giving you 10% off your next order. Just head to vinylunderground.co.uk and use the code ONCEADJ10 at checkout. You also get free UK delivery on all orders over £100. That's ONCEADJ10 at vinylunderground.co.uk. Welcome to Once a DJ once again. I'm here with Spex, the legend of the creators, the distant relative of the great Barry Beats as well, who we're hopefully going to get involved a bit later on. So let's get into it. Si, how are you doing today?
Pretty good, yeah. Not too bad, man. Yourself?
Yeah, not bad, not bad. So you just got the kids to bed, had the Sainsbury's order come in, so it's that real life sort of stuff.
It is, man. Hour and a half late as well, so hence a slight delay in starting the podcast. And no apology either. He rocked up and he was like, I had to sort of reference the fact you're an hour and a half late, and I'd literally just I'd put a note on the door to say, sorry, Tesco's, we've gone to bed. But, or I wasn't going to put, sorry, Tesco's, I'm about to do a podcast. That would have been a bit pretentious. But no, yeah, so literally as I was sticking the note on the door, he was rocking up. So
Typical.
Yes.
Typical. Mm-hmm. Right. We've got a load of stuff to get into here, so let's get cracking. And you'll be our first... And I don't know when we'll ever have another guest that's from Cornwall. So what was Cornwall like growing up and trying to get into hip-hop?
I mean, it was the Mecca. It was nothing short of the Bronx. Not quite. Yeah, I mean, I think recently I've been reading quite a few. I've got there's a book here. Let me dig it out. Where's it? Oh, I can't find it. Is it? Where's this book? No, is it up here? Here it is. Provincial Heads. So this is a British hip hop and critical regionalism, and it's all about, basically hip hop in the sort of, outside of the urban meccas, and a lot of stuff about Cornwall, Devon, up north, and all the stories wherever you're from, unless you're obviously in London, hanging out in Groove Records, all the stories seem to be very similar. People of my age growing up, getting into hip hop. So yeah, I guess, I think my earliest sort of recollections, and it's a bit of a funny one. I can just about recall breakdancing at my primary school. Like when I left primary school, there was a summer fete, and I can remember myself breakdancing. So I must have been building up to that. And I can also remember borrowing the breakdance soundtrack on a cassette from someone from my primary school. So I think it was like literally just the very end of the primary school era. So we're talking like, about 84-ish.
And just for clarity, you're the exact same age as hip hop, is that right?
Correct, yes. Whether debatable, obviously there's a bit of a kind of, controversy whether the 11th of August 1973 was the birthday. But yeah, when that emerged, that was like a bit of a, that grounded me a bit. I was kind of like, could I be the Messiah? What is this?
Everything happens for a reason.
Well, yeah, I was literally born within hours of, the Apache merry-go-round,
Nice.
Across the few miles across the old Atlantic.
Nice. So it's kind of what did you say, 83, 84 then that you were first exposed.
Yeah, it's got to be around that time. I remember taping Step Off, Grandmaster Melly Mel, Furious 5 off top of the Pops, or cassette, portable cassette player up against the TV. So yeah, it's just all around that era. The first record I think I got was Pump Me Up, and I think my brother actually got Girls Love the Way He Spins album. So that's about 83, 84, I think. And then the Beat Street soundtracks, and then obviously got into Beat Street big time. So yeah, that kind of time. It was, I think, pretty much 84 is when the media in the UK started kind of, grasping the whole concept of breaking, and it was a craze.
Yeah. Was that it for you then, or did it kind of die off and come back later?
No, I was, unlike a lot of people who maybe towards the latter part of the 80s started getting into sort of more the rave scene and all that kind of thing. I never deviated. I sort of, walked a very, very straight path, from the electro through to the hip hop. And I guess it was very much sort of one week I'd be practicing my windmills. The next week I'd be practicing me aerials on me BMX. So it's kind of, BMX / breakdancing oscillation. That was pretty much my teenage years.
Yeah.
At that point, it's a bit like a lot of the people have documented. It's kind of like you're this sort of lone person. There might be one or two other people who might be into it. And then I met sort of, my, what's it called? Like soul, what's the word?
Soulmate?
Soulmate, that's the one. in Dren Throwdown, who's another local legendary producer, cut and paste artist, and I met him at a monster truck show of all places in Camborne Rugby Field.
Were you into the monster trucks?
I mean, there wasn't much going on down here, so I wasn't necessarily. It wasn't really my thing, but it tweaked my interest, and you know what? No, it wasn't the monster trucks. They also promised a BMX display, so hence that's why I was there.
Right.
So I rocked up, but no, it was not just monster trucking and BMXing. There was our very own local Camborne City Breakers doing a little on the side of the banks with a bit of cardboard. They were kind of like giving them a bit of competition on the entertainment front. So my mate was there breakdancing. He was a couple of years, was it 1 or 2 years above me at school? So lucky he gave me any time of day. But met him, and instantly, like, he was telling me he actually had, about 20 records. I must have had about 3 or 4 at that time. And eventually went round to his place, was blown away. He had all the electro albums up to about 6 or 7 at that point. He had 12-inch singles,
Just before we go further, can I just ask, how were the monster trucks? Did you watch the monster trucks? I've got a thing about monster trucks. I'm really into them.
Have you?
Yeah. I say really into them. I try and get my kid into them. But I'm a bit of a fan. Like Bigfoot and that. They were just cool.
Yeah, I mean, I think this was probably a second-rate sort of, West Country version.
Like an Escort estate with big wheels.
Yeah, with a couple of... Exactly. I think they were from... I can't quite recall the big trucks, if I'm going to be honest. It was all about, well, the BMX display, which wasn't too bad. And, to me, the stars of the show were the Camborne City Breakers.
Yeah.
And, hooking up with my man Dren. From then on, like, going around to his house, he had records. Then I think I'd always... It's strange. Whenever I was listening to sort of, getting into the music, because it's not like sort of, a rock band or whatever, like traditional music instruments, I always kind of, for some reason, thought I could do this. I could do it better. Like, I had this sort of ridiculous thing. I had no idea how it was being made. I've just about understood about drum machines, maybe, from what I'd seen on Tomorrow's World. But yeah, basically, I was always like, that's a great track, but I'd love to hear more scratching. I always wanted to try and do these kind of electro and sort of early hip hop tracks, but throw more at them, like do more scratching. And of course, I was at that time as well trying to work out what scratching was. I remember another guy who wasn't really even into hip hop, but he was one of the few people who had a record player, and I used to go around to his house. He had a bedroom in his attic, and he had a sort of record player that, I don't know, you could just about scratch a 7-inch on with a bit of toilet roll underneath. And I remember, he had an Axel F, and on 7-inch, so I kind of learned to scratch on that. And then I got Fat Boy Stickum on 7-inch and would take that around and practice scratching at his house. So then I think a few Christmas later, I might have got a cheap turntable. Obviously I wouldn't dare use my dad's, Pioneer, quite tasty bit of hi-fi kit. But, I mean, you couldn't use it. I think I'd probably tried and it had spring loaded. So I just stuck to the pause mixes with the old stereo system in the lounge. But so I got my own one, then tried to sort of hot wire it a little bit so I could do some rudimentary scratching on it. Obviously it was all, they had dials, so it was all like dial scratching back then. Hadn't really heard of a fader. But then Dren, because he was a few years older, he left school. I think he didn't go to sixth form, he got a job straight away. I think mainly because he wanted to get decks and sort of get some equipment. And I remember going around to his house, he'd moved by then, and he was like, I hardly even knew about Technics decks, to be honest. Because how would you, nothing was really getting documented, even if you look at something like Beat Street, which, I did have the video, and it doesn't really sort of center in on the technology and what they were using. It's all guesswork back then. And he'd, obviously heard of Technics decks being the standard, the gold standard. And just remember going around to his house, and he just saved up all his sort of 6 months of wages. And he had that and a Phonics MRT 60 mixer, which you speak to a lot of people of my age and, their eyes light up and they get all dewy eyed about the Phonics mixer, the sort of blue with the yellow decal. And a really good mixer, actually. Sounded great. Had a graphic equalizer on it, which was quite a nice little equalizer. From then I was just round his house, having a little mess around. And then a little while later, and then he got a 4-track, because I think by that time, I must have been sort of about 15 by then. So he would have been 16, 17. And, I'd been exposed at that point to the lessons and sort of cold cut,
right,
and the cut and paste stuff, which again was that was a real sort of wake up call, a real mind blower. Because I mean, if you think of hip hop back then, it's drum machiney, I guess it would just, people just about be starting sampling James Brown, but the cold cut stuff, and especially the lessons, was kind of one of the first times you heard breaks. That, and I don't think I wasn't really aware of Grandmaster Flash's Adventures on the Wheels of Steel, but things of that ilk we started coming across. And so you're actually hearing these breaks, and then at the same time you're sort of starting to hear the records that sampling it and James Brown being a thing. And so as soon as that happened, it was kind of like, right, I love this music. I remember I was kind of always fascinated by a sort of funk music. I always loved in Superman 2, they play Average White Band, Pick Up the Pieces. So even as a youngster, I was obsessed with that track. I loved that track. And that was one of the first breaks that I was, I really wanted to, I'd go around to record shops and, some sort of like snotty nosed 15-year-old, and I'd be in there going, have you got the one that goes doodle doop 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 doop, and so basically just trying to find these breaks, these mysterious breaks, before we'd heard of breakbeat albums or anything like that. So yeah, I was kind of just inspired me to get into digging. Yeah, anything that looked interesting, sort of, any funky, soulful albums I'd pick up and take a guess on with my pocket money.
So you were on digging pretty early then?
Yeah, without really even knowing what we were doing. Really, it was just kind of a fascination with hearing things like The Lessons and the early records. I remember things like Tila Rock, Breaking Bells. When the Roy Ayers Brother Green bit comes in, I was like fascinated. Because again, growing up on Sesame Street, I loved the pinball, the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, all that kind of music. That was kind of my childhood, that was like, that's what we were exposed to as kids, I
mean, it's like texturally, that's quite like, it's quite like library music anyway, really, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it's as funky as it gets, really. Yeah. So yeah, I was kind of, obviously drawn to that kind of music. Obviously, I don't know where it came from. I mean, it's funny, like, a lot of the sort of, well-known, famous American producers, their parents will have like, huge collections of all the good stuff, all the breaks and, but then it's quite funny because I look back at the music I was exposed to as a child and I was obsessed with like, this is before sort of even getting into hip hop, just up into the age of sort of 10 or 11, when I was a kid. Because my dad was into music. And the funny thing is now I look back at all that music that I was exposed to and I can kind of see how it's now come that I really dig that kind of music. Things like Tubular Bells. It's kind of the folky, proggy sort of, melodic stuff that I'm really into. Journey to the Centre of the Earth. Pretty funky Rick Wakeman, you've got, and Moog, it's like a crazy moogie funky album, epic sort of sounding record. It's kind of stuff I'm after now. Also Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young, amazing vocal harmonies, all the stuff that I'm still trying to find breaks that sound like those kind of records I grew up with. And yeah, I mean, I think that's my theory on things is like, it's the music you hear up until the age of 5. The things that embed in your brain are the things you have like an affinity with. And that's why sort of, hip hop took a turn during the sort of noughties because the people producing it grew up in the 80s. So, that's why, things got trap music and grime music and stuff like that. It's because the music that the producers are making, sort of more electronic-y stuff, was, they grew up listening to, either Depeche Mode and things like that. Gary Newton, no, that was a bit earlier, but 80s sort of mechanical music, or maybe the 80s soul, that kind of thing.
So, what was the next kind of key point for you? Did you go to college?
Yeah. So, let me think. Yeah, stayed. I do remember, ironically. I think the last year of secondary school, we had a visit from the careers officer. Came in and asked everyone what they wanted to do. And I remember even at that point, I was convinced going to be a music producer. Like everyone else was like, I don't know, dentist or work at John Menzies or something like, but yeah, straight away, absolutely convinced that was my path. And here I am, still not quite made it, but still trying. But and I guess also obviously DJing at the same time, because obviously obsessed with scratching, and I think they just go hand in hand. I was kind of honing my skills a little bit, albeit without Technics decks myself, but going around to Drens and practicing. It all sort of was around the same time. By the time I was 15, 16, I mean, I entered a local DJ mixing competition. Again, not having any decks, but yeah, at 16, so I would have been last year of secondary school. So yeah, by that point, I thought I was a DJ. Maybe.
What were you up against?
We were up against. There was quite a bit of activity locally. There was 2 big DJs, Paul Berryman, Burzel, Just Too Bad, his DJ name, and DJ Bex, both of which still chat to now. Great guys. They were the two local heroes. Then you had from Plymouth, you had Top Cat Initiative, TC, Joe and Jim Honeywell. They were kind of a league above us, but we didn't really know much about them, to be honest. But if there was ever a mixing there was only a couple of mixing competitions, but we were all in fear of what they could bring. But I think the first one, which was in the Twilight Zone discotheque in Redruth, the one when I was 16, judged by Richie Rich, no less. They had Richie Rich come down. I think Paul Berryman won it. Burzel, Just Too Bad, won it. But I think only because literally all of his mates were there in the crowd going ape over his set. It was a good set, but to be fair, we all knew that TC... Sorry, Paul. I think you'll agree. TC kind of possibly had the edge. As for me, I was up there with the spotlight on me for a good minute and a half before I realised I hadn't plugged my headphones in. And sort of had to call Richie Rich over, and he's like, "Yeah, stick your headphones in."
Like you need that stress on your first DJ battle.
Exactly. But I think not long after that, I think I was like 17. I was definitely just before legal age to be in a club. I used to do a warm up in a really amazing local club called The Bluff in Hale. DJ Bex, who I mentioned, he was the resident there, but he'd get me in to play like the warm up set, hour or so, basically when no one was in there. Used to play sort of. By then I'd got a few breakbeat albums and quite a few sort of decent breaks and stuff, and just played breaks and hip hop.
How did that go down, or was it literally just people were going in and getting the drinks and just kind of getting settled into the night? Like, was the DJ after you playing the same sort of stuff?
I was probably. I mean, because I wasn't really trying. It would have been a pretty quiet club. There would just been a few people filing in. No, I mean, I guess back then it wasn't. You had the main towny club, which was the Pen Mare, and I can imagine they were just. It was pure Dexy's Midnight Runners and Grease Megamix business. But it wasn't. I just remember things like Soul to Soul and Lisa Stansfield. That kind of. It was more that sort of vibe. So it was still commercial stuff. But then he'd mix it up with he'd obviously be playing the It Takes Two and that kind of thing. So there'd be those kind of tracks, the classic like late 80s club bangers. So I'll be honest, man. Even though I know I did it fairly regularly, sort of warmed up for him, I don't actually really. I was probably so focused in, trying to play the tunes and sort of, I didn't really even gauge what was going on around me too much, But yeah, it was good fun.
Once a DJ is brought to you with the support of Vinyl Underground Record Store. Since 1993, VU's been shipping new and used underground house, techno, disco, hip-hop, soul and more worldwide from Northampton in the UK. They're your go-to store for upfront releases, repressed classics and deep digging for undiscovered gems. And they're a great crew to deal with who really care about the music and their customers. To show the support to the Once a DJ community, they're giving you 10% off your next order. Just head to vinylunderground.co.uk and use the code ONCEADJ10 at checkout. You also get free UK delivery on all orders over £100. That's ONCEADJ10 at vinylunderground.co.uk. I wanted to create a product for the listeners to be able to support the show and for the guests as a token of gratitude for being on. So I've teamed up with Sure Shot Shop to create some Once a DJ 45 RPM adapter clamps. These are my weapon of choice as a 45 adapter, as they add stability and grip to aid you in any setup. These are available for £25 each plus flat fee postage from onceadj.bigcartel.com. And if you'd like to see the other models you can buy and also customise, check out sureshotshop.com. Early experiences DJing are a funny one. Like I remember the first time playing in a certain bar with a lot of my peers around and like writing down a set list and then going through it and just my hands shaking like
the old
anybody's
handshakes,
business,
man.
just trying to put the needle on.
Yeah. And nowadays, like, you know, Serato can literally, you know, it doesn't happen very often, but it happened a couple of weeks ago. I think I had about 5 other things open, like Premiere Pro or whatever, like an idiot. And it ground to a halt. And now I don't even like break a sweat. I don't think my heart rate even goes up. It's just like, okay, right. Let's just turn the mixer on and off again with, like, you know, 100 people go, oh, I don't care.
I spoke to someone that was saying that they would use that sort of... Oh, no, I was reading Harold Heath's book, sorry. And he talks about using the fake power cut as like a technique to reboot your crowd if your crowd's just being a bit indifferent. Just turn everything off, pretend there's been a power cut, and then a couple of minutes later, let them stew, and then kick the music back in, and they just start like, way.
No, it's true, man. There's a few times I've like messed up on something, you know, occasionally, you know, something will happen like that. And when I do drop it, as long as I don't drop it really clumsily, people do just go mad, and you think, I should do this more often. I mean, I am a big fan of the, obviously we're skipping way ahead now, but, you know, I do like the kind of, I like to trick people into thinking something's dodgy's happened, like a dodgy loop, and then you keep it going, and they're going like, but then you've got the word association thing that you'll drop, and they go, oh, okay, that makes sense, you know. Or, you know, vocal things where I'll take a little vocal bit and what's the one? I mean, we're going to give away my absolutely torrid kind of commercial aspect of DJing, but something along the lines of, you know, the Calvin Harris Dizzy Rascal Dance For Me, and he's got because it's murder on the dance floor, because it's murder on the, and I'll loop that, and it'll just fade out slowly, and people just go, and then you just cut in murder on the dance floor, you know, things like that. Nice. Just nonsense. But the longer you can leave it, I remember hearing a story about, is it Larry Levine, playing in, what's the big club with the crazy sound system in New York? They have Paradise. Is it? Oh,
Paradise Garage.
No, the other Paradise Garage. And I remember a brilliant story, and the sort of thing, if you could get away with it, I'd love it. Is it CC Penny? What's the track? Finally, the Finally track, and apparently he spent half an hour just playing the intro on loop until people were just kind of losing their head, and then it just came in with finally, yeah, just nonsense like that.
So what was it you studied when you were at college?
Graphic design, and then went to uni, studied graphic illustration, and did a bit of advertising as well. Did like sort of a year doing advertising.
Right. Where did you go to uni?
High Wycombe.
Was that kind of a gateway into the city then? Did you spend a lot of time in London?
Oh yeah, man. Yeah, 100%. Like by then, I'd hooked up with Julian maybe a few years before that. The other guy is partner in the Creators. So
yeah, where did you and Julian meet?
It's a mad story. So I will, if you indulge me again, I'll retell it.
Please do.
This is where it kind of everything comes together that I've kind of discussed up to now. So basically, Dren, who I referenced, is the guy I met at the Monster Truck show, and he was kind of my soulmate coming through, you know. He rings me up saying, mate, you're never going to believe this. I met 2 guys in SOS Records in Truro, which is like one of our little spots, and they knew all about breaks, you know. They knew all these drum breaks. They were putting these records out. I've got this Babe Ruth album, all this stuff we'd never heard of, you know. They put me onto this, that, the other. And, their knowledge is insane. So I was like, great. Have you got their number? Because at that point, you know, there's no internet, obviously. Yeah. Any information, we're just hungry for it, you know, stuck down here. Oh no, I haven't got a number. Oh no, our one chance of gaining some supreme knowledge here has just slipped through his hands. So, yeah, thought nothing of it. Next weekend, I was at the Bluff, warming up for DJ Bex. So this is kind of like, you know, Hale. It's a good, 20 miles from where Dren had met these guys in the record shop. And So I walk in, breakbeat albums, a few sort of funk records and bits and bobs. And they're like, club's empty, apart from two guys. And they're like, "Hey, look at that breakbeat album!" You know, whoa, couldn't believe it. And so sat down. Obviously, turns out it's the two guys. So it's Julian and his mate Johnny F, who went on later to start Liberty Grooves Records, and the label in Tooting. So yeah, and obviously just instantly bonded. But here's the other crazy thing. This really is it's some I'm not into the cosmic stuff, but if there is any cosmic ordering, this definitely is it. So probably about a year before this, I'd gone up to London with my dad, who was he was seeing a young lady whose dad was actually a musician, who was played on quite a few library records, funny enough. And it's where I got my first library records. But yeah, he had a really nice flat in Earl's Court, and we stayed in there. And because I was in London, I was like, pirate radio, so I was tuning, desperately trying to find some good stuff on the radio, and found this incredible show. It was really sort of glitchy, just about sort of medium wave, cutting in and out. But there was this fantastic show, and the premise of the show is it was like 1/3 funk soul, 1/3 breaks, and 1/3 hip hop. So, and yeah, first time I ever heard like jungle jazz, Kool and the Gang, and all these, you put me onto so many breaks. Then just heard this one show, then for the rest of the trip tried to find it again, never found it. So it was just this one time I heard this amazing, like the best thing I'd heard on radio. Bearing in mind, up until then, most people like myself would have to listen to John Peel to hear any hip hop, and it would be like, 2 hours of nonsense, sort of crazy thrash, punk rock music and weird and wonderful music just for those one or two hip hop nuggets. So, but this was like a whole show. It was incredible, and it was called Liberty Radio. So yeah, chatting to this guy, Julian's mate Johnny F, and I said, "Oh yeah, there's a track I'm after. It's called Jungle Jazz. I don't know if you know that one." "Oh yeah, know that one. Yeah. Yeah, I heard it on this. I was in London. I heard this amazing radio show, Liberty Radio, and it was all like breaks and stuff." And he was going, "Oh yeah, very funny. Julian's put you on to, he set you up to say this, didn't he?" And I'm going, "No, what are you on about? No idea what you're talking about." And he's like, yeah, very good. No, seriously, do you know it? Do you ever listen to it? He's going, yeah, very good. Apparently, it was Johnny F's show, right, and they'd only broadcast about 3 times ever. So, like, that's crazy, isn't it? So that's kind of cosmic, man. So, and yeah, I was really good mates with Johnny, like probably more than Julian to start off with. Used to stay with Gut and stay at Johnny's now and again. He had loads of crazy records, man.
So were they both based in London then?
Yeah. Julian was Kingston. Johnny, I'm trying to think where he lived now. It was not far from Kingston. I can't actually remember offhand where he lived, but yeah, he had like a closet, like a closet full of records. Julian, by then, he had like 2 crates. At this point, I had maybe, I don't know, 50, 60 records tops. But yeah, no, Julian had crate. First time I'd heard like things like Gordon's War and lots of the real classics. Holy Grail records at the time. Loads of James Brown albums. And
just one thing to go back to then. So you said that you went up to London for that trip because your dad was seeing someone whose dad was a library musician.
Yes.
Was that your first kind of exposure to, was it kind of KPM type, the really smooth textured stuff, and was it like, what is this?
No, I think I got 2 libraries. He was on the Brighton-based library company, the Regency line.
Right.
So he was like, not, he wasn't one. I don't think he had anything on DeWolf or KPM or any of the big big labels. But yeah, he was on, and I remember he also had like lots of acetates and weird and wonderful things. Probably now, if I went back, you know, he's no longer with us, but you know, yeah, he probably had some crazy records, you know, in his collection.
Yeah.
But yeah, but no, those were the two that I pulled out. And he did a track called C is for Charlie, which is a really funky track. So yeah, I was quite impressed.
Amazing.
And I think, yeah, that definitely was the first exposure, because I remember taking it down to Pop Beats. I think anyone remembers, or if you ever heard of a shop in Camden called Pop Beats, it was incredible. It was one of the first shops in the sort of, I guess, late 80s, early 90s that kind of really understood breaks, and they would have a breakbeat section. And, you know, a guy called Bernard, really nice chap. I used to go down there, and even he hadn't really heard of libraries. Like, you know, I kind of played him those and said, have you got any more stuff like this? And then the next time I came across any libraries was Julian's mate, who became mates of us all, a guy called Peter. He had 2 KPMs. Not sure where they came from, but yeah, eventually managed to trade them up with him, and they were Product Efficiency, which is a banger, and Big Beat 2. So 2 of the real peachy Keith Mansfield killers. So yeah, I got those. You know, I was literally, I kind of, at that point, I kind of just got an inkling of what they were about, sort of media, music. And I remember coming back from getting those thinking, you know, I rang around a load of local, I mean, I should have taken this further because I could have had some real, probably big scores, but ringing around local sort of media companies, anything like that, to see if they had any of these records. And here's the thing. I remember ringing this place in St Earth near St Ives, and he said, oh mate, if only you rang me a couple of weeks ago, I've literally practically filled a skip with a load.
No.
Yeah, mate. you could have taken. So somewhere there was a skip load of library records down here in Cornwall in the early 90s.
Just going back to timeline then. So when you went to High Wycombe, was it with a view of, I want to spend more time with these guys and I think we've got something going on here, or was that just convenient that they were there and you were there?
Yeah, I mean, by that time, Johnny was more involved in, he was more doing his own thing with the shop, and putting out records and going out to New York and stuff like that. And yeah, but I think definitely me and Julian were very similar tastes in hip hop, and yeah, we kind of came up together at a similar level. I mean, I think so equipment wise, if we're going to go to like sort of the timeline of what equipment I got at what point, the first time I ever experienced sampling on a sampler was again via Dren, who after he got the 4-track, it wasn't long after he got the 4-track, he bought a Korg DSS1 sampler, which is a keyboard workstation sampler. Well, actually no, it's not a workstation because you couldn't sequence on it, but it was I think it had about 10, 12 seconds sampling time on it. And it really sounded fantastic, really great sounding sampler. So, yeah, me and Dren were doing some bits and bobs at that point. He actually lent me, you know, I mean, I give it to him, man, you know, what an absolute legend. He would lend me his 4-track and sampler for like a month for me to mess around on. And yeah, it was kind of the sort of thing where you'd have to kind of like put your fingers down and loop stuff and layer, but I was kind of doing loads of mad layering on the 4-track even at that point. And then so I know exactly. So I would have been, because I was one of the youngest in the class, so I would definitely have been like 15 at that point, because I know when I did my GCSEs that summer, I worked pretty much the whole summer at a holiday camp just to earn enough money to buy Dren's 4-track, because he was like he'd agreed, like, you can buy it off me. I'll try and get another one. So yeah, I did that, and I bought his 4-track during that summer. So I must have been using it for a year or so with the sampler before then. So sort of, I reckon 14, 15, I was doing my first sort of little beats. And then, so at that point, I got the 4-track, still going and sort of messing around on Dren's Korg. But at that point, I was like, right, I need my own sampler. So I started, I would be getting Future Music magazine and all the kind of music technology magazine, trying to find out more about the technology and samplers and stuff. And yeah, I was very lucky. You couldn't obviously test any of these. There was nowhere selling samplers. I couldn't like use or check any of these out, and there was no information anywhere. It's not like people weren't even rapping about SP1200s or anything like that. So you didn't know how people were making music, really. The only clue was obviously you'd heard of an 808 and a 909. You'd see that on the Mantronics covers and stuff like that. So they were your only clues, really, as to what they were using. But yeah, I knew it was a sampler that I was after, and I wanted to sample stuff. So I saved up probably for a good solid, I would say, 2 years from leaving during my sort of sixth form years. Whereas everyone else was out sort of, partying and going to these cool places down here where like Aphex Twin was DJing and all these kind of cool things. I was every weekend not in the Bluff, but in the other club. I would be, glass collecting, earning money, to save up to get this sampler. So, eventually saved up and bought a second-hand Ensoniq EPS, which is the kind of, the first, it's not, the Mirage was the first Ensoniq sampler, but it was like the first workstation sampler that then turned into the ASR-10, which is now quite a legendary hip-hop sampling instrument. But yeah, that was revolutionary because that's the first time, and I kind of didn't even grasp it when I was kind of researching it. But you could sequence, it was a workstation. You could actually sequence using samples, and yeah, it was on. From that point, I realized the potential of sampling, and, I'd be chopping stuff up and really manipulating samples and doing nutty stuff with it, pushing it as far as I could push it, really, till it crashed, and it did crash quite a bit.
It takes a lot of focus and patience. Like I do stuff, like I've got an MPC, and I don't have the patience to commit to making anything as good as I would like it to be. You've got to really, really persevere.
Yeah, I definitely think, I've discussed this with a few people, but I think at some point there might be some kind of spectrum. I might be on some form of spectrum, because it's not normal to spend an hour messing around with a kick or a hat, you know what I mean? Just on loop. It's not. The average person would probably think you're losing the plot, if they, and just. But
I guess it's whether it gets you into flow state.
What's flow state, man? Sorry.
So flow state is kind of a concept of when something is hard enough to be challenging, but not too hard to be off-putting, or something like that. I'm kind of paraphrasing it there. So it's kind of being in that zone, in that perfect level of difficulty where kind of you can't think about anything else.
Yeah.
Because it's
100%.
challenging enough, but it's not challenging enough for you to give up on it. So maybe if it gets you there.
Yeah, because I'm not, despite the fact that people think, I'm pretty technical with the production, I'm actually not that proficient at the technical side of it, and that's the thing. I kind of will always learn. I know exactly what I want to be able to do, and as long as I've learnt that and a nice workflow, then I'm free. That's the bit I hate. I hate learning. I've got friends who just buy every new plugin and buy every new bit of kit and want to get this sampler and that sampler. I think, mate, they all do more or less the same thing. I'd be like, I just need to know, exactly how to use it. I don't want my brain to be thinking, how do I do that again?
Yeah.
So then you're just literally, you are pushing yourself, but only to kind of like create the best music and sort of, do something different, or, flip something in a different way. Yeah, but I hate the kind of technical battles, you know. Yeah, quite often I'll be ringing my mate just saying, look, how do I come around and give us a hand MIDIing this up? And, especially back in the days when you had to sync everything up.
Yeah.
It was a bit of a nightmare. Now it's a lot easier, you know, it's all in the box.
Yeah, so. That's it. So just going back to High Wycombe and London then, were you DJing when you were at uni?
Yeah, started doing a few nights. Did a night in a club called The Attic in High Wycombe. So it was like sort of hip hop, acid jazz, that kind of thing, with a guy called Jake, and occasionally Noel Fielding, who was at my uni. He'd come because he was really into his music, and he was like Jake's best mate. So he would be him, Jake, me, and one other guy. Can't remember his name, but yeah, we do a club night down there every Wednesday, I think. So yeah, I mean, I was kind of, I don't know, I got away with it because I wasn't really playing sort of commercial. Back then it's all vinyl, obviously, just playing quite esoteric, funky stuff, breaks, and maybe a bit of disco-y kind of bits, and hip-hop, obviously. So yeah, just locally around High Wycombe I'd be DJing. No further than that, really, I don't think.
So is it like students, or was it kind of general population?
Well, in the Attic, bit of both, because I guess unlike a lot of the students, I guess, would stick together in their sort of student bubbles. But yeah, I got to know, well, first of all, and I'd met him previously, but most people into hip hop will be aware of the legend of High Wycombe being Caveman and MCM. So,
okay.
Yeah. So I'd met Mark before a record fair, you know, maybe a year or so, and I was thinking, it's only a matter of time before I bump into Mark in Wicking.
Is Mark MCM?
Maybe 6. Yeah. So yeah, guess about 6 months in, I bobbing down the road, and instantly, like, you know, we're really great mates to this day. Like, he's the nicest bloke you've ever met. Such a legend. Probably, I don't think I can think of a single person who's more into music.
Right.
He's so infectious, like, you know. So yeah, hanging out with Mark, then meeting loads of his. So kind of got to know a lot of the local music people and just local crowd as well. And they come down sort of.
So that was post Caveman's.
That was after, that was after the second album. Kind of disbanded by then, I think, pretty much. Yeah. So never got to meet the principal, unfortunately. Who, to be honest, you know, let's face it, he could have probably held a torch to almost any American producer at the time, you know, for a year or so, around the time of the first album. You know, he was definitely ahead of his game. And again, I was really looking at, you know, around 89, 90, for those couple of years, the sort of Music of Life, Cold Sweat years. You know, I was just inspired by all that stuff, you know, your hard noise and your sort of hijacks and all that kind of sound.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not massively up on it, but I know with the Caveman stuff, it's just so fresh, isn't it? 'Cause it's a lot more kind of jazz rap.
Yeah. So, you know, huge fans. So yeah, it was definitely an honour to hook up with Mark, and yeah. But I guess, and during the 3 years of being at uni, that kind of spanned pretty much the first. I think maybe in the second year we did the Nas remix, the Ain't Hard to Tell. So we were starting to make moves, you know, me and Julian. I'd be going to London.
So was that a creators mix then, remix? I didn't see, like, I've been through the Discogs, but it's all kind of a bit here and there. So was that like an official UK one then? Was it one of those when it comes out on the UK press?
Yeah, I think UK and Europe.
Right.
So the UK,
how did you manage to get that then?
Bit of a story again. So we formed a group called The Rats, and as with all good groups of the time, The Rats obviously stood. It was is it anachronism? What's the it basically stood for the Roughnecks against the system, because of course we were Roughnecks, very much against the system. I don't even think I knew what the system was at that point, apart from, it provided me with a student grant. Yeah, I wasn't against that. Yeah, so we'd formed this group called The Rats, which was a guy called Tony E. True from Hackney, and another MC called Paracat, Vinny. And we kind of signed like this kind of back of a cigarette packet style deal with someone, with this label. Never came to anything. It came to 5 test pressings being pressed of our first recording. So that was the only time both MCs were on the same track, because shortly after doing that, the Vinny Paracat was had to serve 5 years for a little misdemeanor, shall we say?
Fracturing the occasional law.
Yeah, something along those lines. But so yeah, the ironic story about Vinny, I only learnt literally last year. He's now a famous actor, and he's in Coronation Street.
Oh,
so yeah,
crazy.
So going back to Dave Scratch, I think was a contact of Tony's, E. True. So he did he did the other side, and we did the other side. So we kind of, and I mean, I've always been a bit. It was like obviously just probably one of the best opportunities we've ever had, but at the same time, it was kind of, we had about 2 days to prepare for it. The beat wasn't great, it was okay. It was an early beat, but I'd done on the EPS, so it was just an EPS beat. And yeah, again, remembering how we recorded it, it was very like a Fostex R8. It wasn't like done in a big studio or anything. It was quite lo-fi production, but and it was against the clock. Didn't really come out like our later productions, but it is what it is. It's still, I think it was featured on the 20th or 15th year anniversary. It was on like one of the last reissues of the Illmatic thing.
What did you sample on it? Are you allowed to say?
Well, yeah, I don't. Statute of limitation now. It's a while back. I can tell you. Well, this is the thing where I'm a bit, because it had been used, and we kind of used to stick with the golden rule of never kind of use something that someone else has used. But it was similar, but not the same version. It was a different version of the Hair. Where do you go? Follow the river. Where do you go? But yeah, it was RCA version on some RCA. So it was like a slightly more obscure one, the pink cover one. So it was that. There was a little bit of Tom Scott of the Honeysuckle Breeze album in there. So I mean, you can probably gauge by this. We were big Pete Rock fans, with the name, the creators. Sampling Where Do You Go, which Pete Rock, I think, it's used twice at that point, Down with the Kings and is it Not the Wigget? What was the other sample we used on there? I think there was a bit of I forget the name of it, Christos something of the Donald Byrd.
Oh, Christo Redemptor.
Christo Dils. Yeah, there was a bit of that in there, I think. So it was a kind of hot spot. It was like definitely a lot of different layers in there. Oh, obviously a bit of ESG played like a funny little melody with UFO on it. And the drums were Rainmaker by Fifth Dimension. And I think it's the drums that kind of let it down slightly, because at that point we hadn't discovered the SP. So that was the one chink in our armour at that point.
Once a DJ is brought to you with the support of Vinyl Underground Record Store. Since 1993, VU's been shipping new and used underground house, techno, disco, hip-hop, soul and more worldwide from Northampton in the UK. They are your go-to store for upfront releases, repressed classics and deep digging for undiscovered gems. And they're a great crew to deal with who really care about the music and their customers. To show the support to the Want to DJ community, they're giving you 10% off your next order. Just head to vinylunderground.co.uk and use the code ONCEADJ10 at checkout. You also get free UK delivery on all orders over £100. That's 1-to-DJ10 at vinylunderground.co.uk. I wanted to create a product for the listeners to be able to support the show and for the guests as a token of gratitude for being on, so I've teamed up with Sure Shot Shop to create some 1-to-DJ 45 RPM adapter clamps. These are my weapon of choice as a 45 adapter, as they add stability and grip to aid you in any setup. These are available for £25 each plus flat fee postage from 1todj.bigcartel.com, and if you'd like to see the other models you can buy and also customise, check out sureshotshop.com. So with the SP, and I know we're going more on the production and DJing side here, but for anyone who's not aware, the SP1200 is a legendary drum machine / sampler. Marley Marl, Pete Rock, Lord Finesse, just everyone's used them.
Everyone, yeah.
So by that, are you saying that the grit that you get, because it's 12-bit, isn't it, as well, as opposed to 16 or 24-bit? So are you saying that when you put drums into an SP, they just naturally sound a bit kind of crunchier?
Oh, they've definitely got that. Yeah, they've got that distinct sound. But more than that, at the time, we were struggling with the timing. So using like the Ensoniq sequencers, the inbuilt sequencers, they were just a little bit janky. You know, they were probably by today's standard, they're probably all right because everyone wants that kind of slightly looser feel. But we always struggled. At that time, everything was kind of, very sort of 16 triplet kicks and, sort of very much on the one.
Yeah.
And we struggled to get that. And the definition as well, sort of, everything sounded a bit disparate on the using the Ensoniq gear as a sequencer. So, yeah, I think when we first got the SP, it was like suddenly everything was rock solid and there was no drifting. I mean, there's like a little thing with the Ensoniq samplers. You hear it in some records actually, where you get to the end of a 4-bar loop and there's a slight delay, so they're really difficult to mix. Yeah, it's just things like that we were battling against.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I think the real turnaround was when we sort of got the SP and the ASR 10, because at that point I don't think Julian's first sampler was a bit of a misfire. He got something called a W30. Was it a Roland W30. And before that, I think he was messing around doing stuff like on an Amiga. There's stuff he was doing before I met him, really. And then he saw that I had the EPS. So he got like a W30, and it kind of did the same thing, but it had, to my ears and to his ears, it just did have this sort of nasty sound. So yeah, as soon as the ASR came out, that was it. He was like, oh man, I'm getting the latest in line. And also the fact that it had, 60-second sample, crazy amount of sample time was just the game changer,
Yeah. So did you guys settle into a rhythm then, or like a balance of, would you do a little bit more of the production and Julian came with slightly wider selection of records, or was there kind of like a balance there, or was it just kind of a bit more 50-50? Or
I would say, because before that, I was hanging out with Dren and we were doing bits and bobs, and Julian was kind of messing around a little bit with a few of his people, but basically because we came up together at exactly the same time, when the technology was there to do more advanced stuff, and because we had exactly the same vision and like the same hip hop, we really did just kind of inspire each other 100%. We were kind of almost we didn't need, almost, it sounds a bit cliche, but you didn't have to kind of communicate too much. We knew what was working, what wasn't working, without having to second guess stuff. Occasionally, not sure about that bit, and I'll be, yeah, fair enough, and vice versa. But yeah, as a rule, I guess maybe Julian was maybe slightly more on the drum game, and I was more on the melodic sort of side of things, possibly. I mean, it went that way a little bit towards the end. But on the whole, I do, especially when after the EPS, then I got the MPC myself, so I had like the 2000 XL. So then I'd be doing beats by myself. Then Julian would be doing beats on the SP and the SR10. So like quite often he'd start a beat, then I'd come and like put the bits on the top and play a bass line or whatnot, and vice versa. You know, I'd take a beat and he'd come up with some ideas on the MPC. So yeah, we were very much kind of, you know, we'd finish our ideas off, but most of the ideas that we worked in the studio sort of were coming from I guess the way we worked, we were always drums first, so we'd always like get some drums rocking, and then we just literally just be pulling the breaks out, just playing records and just mixing things over the top until something sounds like it's hitting. Yeah.
Was it Greenpeace that put out the first EP?
No. So the first record, our first release is like the Master Plan EP. Yeah. That was Blindside Records, so a guy called Richard.
Right.
Yeah. And he put out like quite a few 12s. We produced quite a few 12s. We were like the Big Qualm 12s, Two Face, which is Natural Elements, basically L Butter and L Swift and A Butter. Yeah, so he did the first things. And it was Greenpeace who was involved with Wall of Sound.
Yes, yeah, like because
they created.
How did the EP go down? Then did it go down quite well?
I think so, man. Yeah. Yeah, I think it did, man. I mean, our circle was very much just a sort of Soho circuit of, you know, bongos and all those kind of record shops, Deal Real and bongos, places like that. So I know in bongos it was pretty well received, man. Yeah, I think people, and we got quite a bit of press on it. Features in things like Black Echoes and magazines like that. So
because going from that to then getting onto like Wall of Sound's a pretty big deal, right?
Yeah, well, what had happened is we decided we need to sort of expand, and at that point, like we'd go out to New York and sort of networking with other more sort of high profile people, and I think it was during the mixing session of we did one of the Qualm tracks we were mixing with Spinner, and met a guy, Matt Fingers. And he's like basically a fixer.
Right.
He knows everyone who is everyone, especially on the kind of underground backpack sort of circuit at that time. So he was literally like, you know, he's just a shopping list of rappers that we wanted to work with. So yeah, at that point we were like, let's try and do a full size, full length project with different artists. Again, there weren't that many. I'm trying to think like. I don't know, we obviously didn't start it, but there wasn't a huge amount of producer albums around at that time with different MCs. There were loads afterwards, you know. But so yeah, we just decided, and it was kind of a commercial thing as well, because I think you can only get so far working with. It was nothing against UK artists, but it was like, as far as maximising our reach and sort of trying to spread our name out, you know, we started working with American artists, and obviously then that opens up the whole East Coast market, independent market. And we were selling, you know, like Blindside would sell like 20, 30,000 copies of some of these 12. So there was we knew that these records were selling. So yeah, that was kind of like a sort of calculated sort of commercial consideration that we'll try and get some recognised artists over our beats, basically. So yeah, we started planning that with Matt, and yeah, just things like the Most Def and Quali. They were in town, so we just kind of put the word out. And actually, I think we just went to their show and just kind of, I think we put the feelers out and sort of, you know, negotiated something with.
This was the Hard Margin, right?
Come round a couple of days later. Yeah, and there were 2 tracks they did for the album, but they were pretty much just starting out. I think they had like Universal Magnetic, Body Rock might have just dropped, you know, so they weren't really big at that time.
But like you had some pretty like legit names on the album, and I think having someone that's got those connections overseas at a time when communication wasn't as simple and effortless and as efficient as it is now, to actually, it's all good and well having these contacts, but to actually get it done is a huge achievement, and I think it speaks volumes to people believing in what you're doing as well.
We did find, with something like production, we go out to New York, we had the records, we had like loads of crazy European records and British breaks, so we're kind of associated with producers and stuff like that,
right?
And just generally it's like you never get judged. I never felt it was getting judged as some white English men going over to in their territory. Not at all. It was like literally you're only ever getting judged on the music, which is fantastic. But at the same time, a lot of the time you had to sort of, there were probably lots of opportunities that you've got to be there ready to strike at that moment, if you know what I mean. That's why it was good to have someone like Matt who could like schedule stuff and coordinate a project, because I think it's one of those things where people might dig your music and your beats, but there's so much stuff out there, the next minute they were forgotten all about you, sort of thing. You've got to be I mean, we did think at some point we were thinking, should we move out there and try and make a thing, but so it's kind of how it sort of there was a bit of investment. We had a little bit of money behind us, and also Blindside. Originally it was kind of Blindside was funding a lot of it, so we had to cut a deal with them when Wall of Sound bought, signed the deal with them. So
was there much other hip hop on Wall of Sound at the time? Because they were a bit more of a dance label, weren't they?
Yeah, man, dance. Big Beat was kind of, I guess, their main thing. The Wise Guys and Propeller Heads, people like that.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, they were. It was kind of, apart from Greenpeace and a couple of people, it was kind of not really our world. You know what I mean? Very much a sort of dance circuit world of, shall we say, partying. Like, we weren't big partiers. This is the thing.
Right.
We were just studio gangsters. We would just literally just be in dark, dingy studios, just knocking out beats all constantly. We weren't out there partying at that point much. Whereas it was, Wall of Sound was. I always think if we were kind of out there sniffing it away with everyone else, we might have kind of, made more connections, and because there is obviously there's a element of that in the music industry, and I think our kind of slight reclusiveness and just working on the craft rather than the outward partying element. I don't know.
Yeah, I think sometimes you get these situations where you've got the person who handles that side of thing, and then you've got the person who sits back more and is like, no, I'm just going to work on my thing.
Yeah, well, we had sort of management would be kind of more smoothing.
Yeah.
So we had a manager who sort of,
like, I'd like to get Greenpeace on here at some point. Our mutual friend Jay Squared helped me with quite a lot of kind of research for this episode, and he's mentioned to me about Dan's personality and just the energy that he has around people and stuff like that. He said he's kind of almost like really infectious like that.
Yeah, I mean, and the other thing is I only kind of, because I've just been reading this book here, which is incredible. Yeah,
Andrew Emery, shout out, got his new book on pre-order today.
I'm waiting for it. But, and I never really, the thing is, and now obviously Dan's done the track with
Diamond D.
Yeah, but he never really, I never got the impression he was kind of like, he'd never big himself up or mention himself even as a producer. I knew him as a DJ and he'd be playing in loads of clubs, but he was very kind of reserved on that, which is great because, some people can be a bit, a bit sort of high intensity and, I've done it. He was very kind of, humble on the, I had no idea he had such a prolific group, and but just the fact that, I see his struggle with the early equipment and trying to make beats the same way we all were there. I guess, we just probably were a bit more fanatic. I don't know. We stuck at it and kind of, probably got a few breaks and.
Yeah, because Hard Marching was pretty big, right?
I don't know, man. I think the biggest track was maybe Cronkite was probably the most successful track. The harpsichord one. That's gone on to, it was used in some films and things like that. So Yeah, that's the one. If it gets played on the, occasionally hear it on Steve Lamacq or something like that. So I'd say that's probably our biggest track that people like. But yeah, I think it did. The album did seem to do pretty well, man. But I mean, here's the story. It's like with most labels, we never actually got accounted to. All a bit of a sorry story, and then not long, about a year or so after the release, the label sort of went bust, and so it's just one of those. But by around that time, we sort of were disbanding and sort of going our own separate ways anyway, me and Julian. So.
Yeah, it happens, doesn't it? But then the other thing just from that time that I wanted to ask about is you guys did the mix with Plus One.
Okay. I mean, yeah, I don't really... I mean, we knew all those guys, man, but I don't... He just did that. We had no involvement really in that, man.
Right.
So, yeah. No, all we did was the only bit we did there were like 4 little minuet sort of skitty ideas with 4 different MCs on.
Right.
So we did the beats for those. I think we've worked with most of the Scratch Perverts on various projects over the years.
Yeah, did you hear? I can't remember if it's on the episode or not, or if it's on the kind of on the cutting room floor. But Woody was saying that the most impressive bit of turntablism he's ever seen was Plus One just practicing, doing a sound check. I think it was for a DMC performance.
Yeah.
It seems like he's a bit of a prodigy, to put it mildly.
As they say in America, he was a problem. But then to me, Woody is probably up there as one of my favourite DJs. Yeah. Those old routines where he turns the deck around and puts the thing and does that clunk thing. It's just, and the funkiness of his juggles, mate. I mean, yeah. I guess I'm more into, because it went a little bit sort of, obviously they went dubsteppy and sort of just more techno-y, sort of aggressive and sort of mechanical sort of, whereas I was definitely more on the Mr. Thing, Woody, funky, musical vibe. I mean, I respect it all, man, but...
So it was when they all started getting their routines produced. There's a guy called Lejad that produced a lot of them for the French and German guys, I believe, and it's incredible producer, super talented.
Yeah.
But everything was just like a million miles an hour, really compressed. And what the guys are doing skill-wise is incredible. But it lost 100%. This feel and this extra resource that you have to have. So that's kind of where it went off a bit. And it became a lot more about the bedroom turntablist than the DJ, as it were. But speaking of DJing then, were you still DJing throughout the sort of creators production period?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, during that period, especially sort of before the album and sort of, we were on like an agency. We were getting, especially I think around the launch of the album and for the next year or so, we got lots of gigs, DJing all over the place. So that was our kind of like, and being on Wall of Sound as well, be DJ for Big Beat Boutique and play Fabric and places like that. So we were playing like big places and Europe and all over the place for a year or so. I mean, to be honest, it's like I just wish, because it was all vinyl still back then, but I was always we were always trying to do adventurous stuff and thinking, should we bring the sampler out and trying to do all this stuff that now you can do pretty much all on your mixer and with Serato and loop, all the crazy stuff. If we had that technology back then and spent a bit of time sort of honing sets, and I think it would have been a different, we would have had a bit, I don't know, just the experience of like, getting to know what different crowds were into. Because we were just playing sort of underground hip hop and that. But now, if I could take myself back now with the technology at that point, we could. I personally would be able to really tear it up, I think. But, I feel like it was a bit of a squandered opportunity. Occasionally, I don't, without being too sort of controversial. I don't think Julian was quite as into, even though he was a better DJ, skill-wise, as far as scratching and cutting up, he was definitely 100% better than me. I don't think he wasn't really into the travelling and DJing as much. So I loved it because I was thinking this is good money. And I love to, it's nice to get out there and travel, and I love the whole, all the aspects of that. But it was just kind of, it takes two to really kind of, I think, because we kind of came up at the same time as like the Next Men and people like that. So, and they're obviously still amazing, doing great stuff. And,
I was going to ask because there was kind of the Next Men and the P Brothers in this kind of wave of UK producers working with American MCs. Would they have been using Matt as well?
I don't know, man. No, I don't think so. Not as far as I know.
Right.
I don't actually know.
Yeah, I was just kind of wondering if there was a common theme with getting those links.
Not as far as I know, no. I mean, obviously, as you're getting a little bit, maybe 2002, 2003, the internet is starting to take hold, and I can't remember when MySpace, but it would be easier to communicate with people. But if you think when we were sort of planning our album,
that's
from like 98 onwards, we started recording bits for the album and planning it around probably 97, 98. And at that point, there was no internet really. None of us had a computer. Just about had cell phones, maybe. I can't remember, but
I think dealers did.
Well, yeah. Well, we were dealing breaks, but
What was that like? We've not touched on that because you guys were going to America and selling, right? Is that right?
Yeah, I mean Julian more so. He was definitely more like fully hardcore on the breaks and the digging and acquiring records. I would be doing my bit as well, but Julian was heavy on that, and obviously after the Creators, he went on to specialise in that side of things quite heavily. But I mean, I'd still be, I'd be more like digging, finding bits and bobs in charity shops and just vlogging them to Americans, Top of the Pops albums for like $50 and stuff like that.
Oh, not bad.
But it was a good little period. Went out quite a few times. And
after the Creators, then, what did production and DJing look like from there? And when did the day job kick in?
Well, let me think. So I moved 2003, around 2004-ish. Moved back to Cornwall because I had like a job with my uncle, who's a filmmaker, so I was doing a bit of that. And then with my ex-partner, moved back and had a young family. My youngest, my eldest, sorry. He was baby, so came back to Cornwall. So I started DJing a bit down here. Just doing like hip hop nights down in Penzance. So there was a good little stint where I was playing quite regular hip hop nights down there, and we'd get all the big artists would come down to Penzance. So the guy booking it would, we had like Guru, Beat Nuts, we KRS-One.
Oh wow!
We even had so we had like big artists on like a small, relatively small stage. I was DJing for that night. Then that kind of dried up a bit. I was doing like the odd kind of beach bar-y thing, playing sort of nice grooves, but then I guess, well, basically, to cut a long story short, DJing wise, I've pretty much been playing, I think, for about 15 years every single weekend. So I got like a gig. A club was opening up in Truro, like a small bar kind of place, upstairs bar club. So I got in there, and literally I haven't stopped since, So, but the only issue was, I mean, when I started, I didn't have Serato, so I was just playing more commercial. By that, I was trying to amass more crowd pleasers. Your sort of, more your sort of Stevie Wonder superstitions and that kind of stuff I wasn't really bothered about before, but I had to get all that stuff for DJing. So, I'd start, and more R&B. I'd be buying R&B records and the more commercial hip hop records, I'd start buying all those. And that was maybe for a year or so until Serato, you know, and I was kind of pretty early on the Serato, and that was obviously just, you know, a complete game changer. Could then just grab anything I wanted, and yeah. So, but at the same time, it's kind of turned me. I mean, you know, I am that kind of towny, kind of commercial, open source DJ now. So with no shame in the game, but only, you know, needs must. It's like,
do you enjoy it the same that you would have enjoyed a breaks night?
No, I mean, it depends. I always look at it this way. What I don't enjoy is DJing like in a bar where there's people eating and not playing great music, but just not engaging at all. You know, I might just put on a playlist, you know. So I just always want to try and get a reaction, because it's just boring else, you know. I just want to get a little bit of energy off what's going on and feedback. So, yeah. So I just started playing more to the crowd, you know, what they wanted, and you know, then you'd get you get a positive reaction back, and you know, I fed off that and sort of just built up a kind of, you know, reputation for playing stuff people like, but at the same time, you know, playing more commercial music, more and more commercial. Then I went to another club, which sort of was the biggest club in town, where it just started, so I built that up again. I kind of like gone into quite a few places where they've just opened and sort of helped establish them, kind of thing. But at the same time, you've got to, you know, if it's a sort of 18 to 25, 30-year-old young crowd, you've just got to give them what they want, really. Commercial nonsense, and you know, obviously you play some decent R&B and stuff like that as well, which I've you know, I like, and you know, you play your little odd set of funky stuff and soul music and stuff, but on the whole, you've just got to, yeah, give them. And I've probably got worse and worse, you know. I draw the line at Venga Boys, you know. I do have, like, you know, there's a couple of, you know, Barbie Girl, things like that, but yeah, on the whole, no shame in the game. And only because, and you say, do I enjoy it? It's a weird one. Like, I don't mind it. I don't dread going to work. I don't like, but it is just like a day job now. It's kind of, you know, I put everything in, you know, I'm there, and I will, you know, I think about every blend, and you know, I plan it, and it's all kind of, you know, but so it's not like autopilot, but at the same time I know what I'm doing. It's kind of like, yeah, I don't know, I enjoy it. I like the feedback, and some nights are better than others, you know what I mean. But what I don't like is kind of, you know, it's a struggle if I'm playing somewhere where you know, say I'm playing somewhere and trying to play the good stuff, and they're sort of moaning and just not reacting. I mean, to me, I'm not really doing my job, you know what I mean? I mean, it's a weird one, isn't it? Because obviously so many, you know, half my friend lists on, you know, the socials, all DJs and that, and there's a lot of kind of, the worst thing is getting requests and all this stuff. And I mean, look, everyone just has their own way of doing things, but to me it's like, yeah, if I can make you happy, if you can go home and say, oh, he played what I wanted, and tell their friends, and you're just there really to make the club as much money as possible, you know, keep them there. And, you know, when I've been on deals where it's been like a profit share of the bar, the more I keep them there, the more happy. Obviously, I don't want to keep them on the dance floor all night, so occasionally I might have to go out there, you know, throw a few clangers in there just so they go to the bar and get some more drinks. So,
well, this is an interesting thing. I don't know if I've got into it on the show, but when you were first saying that, it made me think my old boss. I used to work at a railway, like a train builders. And my old boss there, he used to DJ back in the 90s at the big nightclub in Derby. And he was saying about how they'd have to put on certain songs to stop everyone dancing so that they would go and get another drink. And you've got to kind of like cycle the dance floor.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, there is an element of that. It sort of depends where if you're in a club, if you're in a place where it's the only club in town, then you can definitely afford to do that. But I mean, where I play at the moment, I've been for the last sort of 5 years in Falmouth. there's so many clubs, there's so many students. It's like 10,000 students.
Right.
So there's always going to be another option. So it's a fine line with that one, It's not like I'm going to suddenly go into some modal jazz, I've just got to, play something that I know is just not really a gangbusters tune.
He's playing his weather report again. Should we get a drink?
Yeah. that Joe's is just the one. Yeah. So, yeah, it's a bit of a, but as I say, I know the crowd. I'm so familiar with it now, and the venue, and what goes down, what doesn't go down, what works.
And up until recently, you've been doing a Friday and a Saturday, and you've got a day job, and you're the same age as hip hop, and you've got young kids again, right?
Yeah.
How are you doing all this?
Well, and as soon as I go to bed, it's like a double shot of coffee, and that's when I get to do any music stuff. So that's why I apologise and feel a bit bad. I'd love to do more music stuff, but I literally just have that limited small window of opportunity to do the music. But yeah, I mean, it's just got to do it. You've got to bring the money in, and I don't know.
That's it. But the day job's related, isn't it?
Yeah, man. Yeah, I work at it's a music distribution company. It's actually like Europe's biggest independent digital music distributor, and it's kind of about 8 miles from here in Truro, from where I live. So yeah, like the whole office, it's like 100 musicians in there working. So it's but yeah, so I've been there about 3 or 4 years, and
it's almost kind of full circle, really, from the library days.
I guess. Well, it's not so. They do have, like a music library, kind of, media library department, but publishing. They have publishing, but it's kind of publishing for people who are sort of on Spotify and distributing their music digitally. So a lot of people don't realise you can actually claim publishing back as well as streaming royalties. So yeah, we try and cover as many angles that there's a revenue stream. And currently, couple of years, we've launched a sample pack company.
Oh, nice.
Site. So yeah, I basically am on the team, sort of with head of content and quality control. So yeah.
Oh, amazing.
So yeah, we've got anyone looking for royalty-free samples. Little quick plug, but it's pretty much the cheapest, without a doubt, the best value. Starting at $2.99 for 100 sample credits. So it's like a subscription-based service. Yeah, we've got loads of good stuff on there.
You need to tell us the name of it.
It is Root Note Create. The distribution company is called Root Note. So again, if you're looking to distribute, we've got like a free model where you can. There's a lot of people don't realise to get on the stream. Anyone can basically get their music on the streaming on Spotify and all the sites, but you can't just approach Spotify. They have to go through an aggregator, like a distributor. So we are that sort of middleman company. So yeah, so you send the music to us, we moderate it. If it's not got anything naughty in it, when qualifies, we'll put it on the streaming sites for you. You can do it. It's absolutely free, and we take like a 15% cut of any royalties, or you can pay a small amount for each release and keep 100%. So it's a pretty good deal. Yeah, but obviously, as everyone knows, alas, there is not a fortune unless you're kind of Taylor Swift. It's not exactly big bucks in the streaming world, but you've just got to
Have you got any little gems for our listeners before we jump off? Because I'm getting to the time where I'm not going to lie to you, I don't have your stamina and I'm going to need to go to bed.
Okay, man. Gems.
How are you still doing this at 50 with young children? Because I know how tiring young children can be, and as well as having a day job. How do you keep devoted?
Well, I mean, as I said, when I realised I was born on the 11th of August, I have convinced myself I am the Messiah. So it's only right I do my duty to foresee the prophecy of world domination. No, I mean, I guess I've just I've always been fairly confident that, you know, I've got some good stuff to offer, and I want to kind of like, you know, I've got so many musical ideas and things I want to do, and, you know, I'm just very driven just by trying to make more of a kind of, you know, my whole thing is I want to kind of make a situation where I am doing it more full time. And, you know, I guess it's like having that kind of belief that kind of keeps me going, that at some point all it takes is one track to blow up, you know what I mean? Or one little sort of hustle to really take off, and you're thinking, oh, right, there's some money in this. I mean, it sounds bad, but I do kind of think of things of like, because I want to support myself, and because obviously the job takes up so much energy, I'm thinking everything I do, I have to, I mean, the one thing that kids do and having limited time does make you sort of consider is like, it makes you so much more efficient. You know, it's like, I look back at the time where I was relatively free and I think, oh my God, I could have just, you know, used that time so much more effectively.
That's so
it's really great inspiration to kind of, you know, I mean, I've always got my sort of, everything's planned out, projects, you know, timelines of what I'm doing. And so I'm kind of really focused on it. And I just, you know, I just want to really just pursue the music. You know, I love doing it, love making it, love sharing it, love kind of inspiring. You know, obviously the stuff I've been doing, Barry and all that, alongside Barry, is just seems to be inspiring people. People love it. So, you know, that kind of gives me the energy to strive forward. And I think it's just as well, it's like, you know, if I didn't have it, you know, what are you living for? You know, it's just the thing that gives me positivity and makes me happy, and just sort of, I don't really get sort of, you know, I don't really sort of, I'm quite a positive person, don't get negative, so I'm always driven. I got quite an upbeat sort of, you know, happy persona. And I think that's just due to the fact that I'm quite happy with what I'm doing musically, and that I know that I've got, you know, potential to do bigger and better things. You know, that's kind of what drives me, I guess. And it's one of those things, is, you know, if you do establish yourself and you sort of, you know, make your mark and, you know, create a catalogue of music in a sense, you know, if it becomes successful, that's something that can, unlike doing a 9-to-5 job, you know, I mean, I'm always saying, like, if only I could get a Christmas hit, you know, it's like one of those things where it could, in theory, who knows, generate sort of ongoing revenue. But yeah, I just love doing it, man. Just, yeah, obsessed with it, obsessed with trying to kind of emulate old records now and all that kind of stuff. And there's, I mean, to me, the technology is just the key now. It's like,
yeah.
Whereas I might have hit a brick wall before, now it is more or less limitless. You know, it's like if you told me 20 years ago that you could extract vocals from things, you could take the bass line out of things, that you could turn things into MIDI, and then that you could apply every instrument under the sun and it would sound realistic, and then you put killer drums over the top that you program yourself, all that stuff. You know, when we were like time stretch, we thought time stretching was the future, like, you know, and to time stretch on an ASR 10, you had to like get a calculator out, you had to set it up, you then had to go make coffee, make tea. It would take about 10 minutes, you know, come back, and then you're lucky if it didn't crash. So now to do it instantly, you know, I mean, look, all props to everyone who's out there rocking the SP1200s with 10-second sample time. You know, I always say, whatever you're into, whatever you enjoy making music on, there's no one in the world can like fault you for that or tell you otherwise. But for me, it's like, you know, I never was even into the SP1200 as much because it was just too limited. You know, there was not so much. You couldn't swing the drums. You limited sample time, all that stuff. I always just wanted more sample time, more to be able to manipulate time stretch stuff and basically do the stuff you can do easily now. You know, and there's always a new tool doing something else crazy that you think, wow, if I could, you know, incorporate that into my music. And all the emulators and, you know, the saturators and guitar pedal simulators that will make your stuff sound old and gritty. It's just amazing. So, you know, I'm inspired by that as well.
But it's all having that patience and that fortitude to crack on with it.
Yeah, I mean, when you say patience, maybe patience to learn it, and master the technology, and that's the element I don't really like, having to learn new stuff. I just want it to do what I'm thinking about in my head. But yeah,
that's it.
Where there's a will,
cool.
Generally a way.
Right. If you can, next time you see Barry, if you can pass on my apologies to him, I'm going to drop him a text now and just tell him I can't do tonight. I'll be honest with you, I'm just too tired. The kid keeps climbing into bed in the middle of the night and just wriggling.
Well, you just got over a pretty bad cough, so yeah, our youngest has been up coughing all night. So yeah, I feel your pain there, man.
Takes it out of you, but yeah. I'll get something set up with him in the next couple of weeks. And just once again, thanks very much for your time today. Really appreciate
that. Pleasure, man. No, I mean, as I said, I've been enjoying the podcast. Been, mopping up, absorbing all the episodes. Great stuff, man. Great stuff.
Cool. Right.
And good music. I love the theme music as well, man.
Yeah, I wonder who
title
made
music's
that.
Incredible. Yeah.
Yeah.
Dope.
Yeah. Shout out, Si. Thank you very much for letting me use that as well. That's incredible.
Oh, no. All good, man. Honour. Honour.
All right, mate. Right. Take care.
All right, man. In a bit. Cheers, bud.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Once a DJ. If you'd like to support the show, then head to onceadj.com/support to find out how you can help. If you'd like to get in touch with any feedback or suggestions, email onceadjpodcast@gmail.com. Once a DJ is produced by the good people at Remote Control. If you'd like to find out more about working with them, head to remote-ctrl.co.uk.
That was nice.